This is going to be my last video for a while, a couple of months, and having just done one on a subject that I find rather personally distasteful, I'm going to end off, I guess, with a subject that's always been a lot closer to my heart. The idea of some measure or some way we've been speaking about the ability to actually enjoy one's life and to actually be happy. We live in a world where success is usually and increasingly defined by how much money has someone got, or how successful they are in a very narrow interpretation of that term. Success being how successful you are in your career, how successful you are in becoming famous, how successful you are in making money, generally materialistic things, or doing your life right, getting it correct. Now, interestingly, I believe that I live in a culture where this kind of thing, doing life properly according to a preset series of formulae, I live in a culture where I think that that is emphasized more than a lot of cultures. There are similarities, say, to the Japanese culture, the work ethic and self-abasement, and a lot of other cultures, say, like the Scandinavian, the German, Northern European in general. Perhaps one would vaguely say the Protestant work ethic seems to put human happiness second to disposing of one's time on earth efficiently and correctly. Happiness takes second place. Now, despite a few appearances to the contrary, people in other cultures, when they look at the WASP, I suppose, or the Northern European, they're almost unanimous in their conclusion that English-speaking people from Northern Europe, in other words, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants by any other name, don't really enjoy their lives a great deal. Moreover, they're not even intent upon enjoying their lives. Now, that is something that I think that a lot of cultures look at us and say, what is it that motivates these people? Why do they push themselves so hard when they do so at the cost of their own personal happiness? The obvious case of that kind of thing takes place in the United States, and to a lesser extent, I suppose, throughout the English-speaking Western world, in the subject of the African or African-American, African-Canadian, even Afro-British person's view of what he might loosely call the white man. The concept of soul is most articulated, I think, in African-American culture. It has something to do with it's an indeterminate quality. It has something to do with spontaneous emotion, thinking poetically, thinking in metaphor. It's not an easy thing to define from, as it were, the outside. I'm obviously not an African Canadian, African American, but I often, that the whole concept of soul, which seems to be central to African American self-identity, is a concept that's always fascinated me. Now, inasmuch as African Americans seem to seek, or at least a large sector of African American population seems to seek to at least become as good as anyone else in society, to become as educated, as successful entrepreneurially, as successful economically, socially, culturally. This idea of soul is something that a lot of African Americans seem to doggedly cling to. Now, Afrocentrism is a concept which I think that a lot of Americans misunderstand. A lot of white Americans, or white Canadians, let's be honest, misunderstand, in that a lot of white people tend to think that there's a whiff of racism about that, which I suppose there might be. You read Malcolm X, and while he repented of that before he ended his days, he was an out-and-out racist at a formative period in his life. But I think that what it is the African American wants to, or at least a certain type of African American wants to become successful and become as shall we say, modern as his white fellow countrymen, but he doesn't want to lose that sense of soul. That's why he says, I want to be as good as the white man, but I don't really want to be the white man. Now, that's not an easy thing to get across to people without sounding racist. Again, I think that a lot of black people, African Americans, look at white people and say, you people don't really enjoy your lives the way I do. You know, this idea of music sort of grabbing my soul. When I go to church, my religion sort of grabs me by the soul, grabs me by the heart, and I experience a lot of things in life, which it's hard to say that white people feel the same way. Now, this isn't just African Americans. I grew up in an Irish Catholic background, and the Irish actually tend to see the English in the same way. The English are more successful, they're more efficient, but the Irishman sort of thinks the Englishman is a bit of a machine, a bit of a heartless, cold, soulless machine. The Irishman is moved by poetry. The Irishmen are famously not, they don't think that there's anything, shall we say, effeminate or unmanly about poetry, about singing, about dancing, about spontaneity and that kind of thing. So inasmuch as maybe he kind of wants to be as successful and wants to be as rich and as respected in the world as the Englishman, he doesn't want to give that up. He doesn't want to give up his soulfulness. That's one thing that the Irish have always considered that they have over the English, is that really the Irish have a soul. And that's, in my opinion, why the Irish have often identified with the African American, because I think that they see that they have that same characteristic. Now, it's not just these two groups. These are the best known, if you ask me. But, for example, Latin Americans tend to see the Norteamericanos as successful but kind of empty people, not enjoying their lives a great deal, not being able to truly appreciate things. Russians have a concept, I think it's called umleni, which means this kind of atavistic feeling that's just short of tears, that they kind of believe that if you don't possess this quality of soulfulness, you're pretty much, you don't have a heart, you're dead to the world. Any number of other cultures feel the same way. Southeast Asians, where I'm heading today actually, tend to see white people the same way. Soulfulness, I think, is something that kind of, for a lot of other cultures, makes life worth living. And this is one of the things where you will see where people want to integrate with the modern world, but they don't want to give up that one aspect that is central to who they are, central to not just their self-image, but central to their entire sense of being a human being. I think it's something that we would do well as white, English-speaking people to learn from. I think that they can teach us a heck of a lot in making sense out of this life thing and enjoying it a little more, in spite of all its problems. Thank you.